Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday special. This is the JRPG Report, and this is our very, very special Spoilercast episode for Trails of Cold Steel 4. This is a Spoilercast, so if you have not played not only this game, but pretty much at least all 4 of the Cold Steel games, if not all 9 mainline titles, you will want to stop listening immediately. You're about to get everything ruined. So if you have played everything, please continue to listen as we welcome in Jake to the podcast. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I am doing quite well. We've been planning this one for a while. You had to wait a few months for me to finally get done my playthrough so we could have this conversation. Sorry about the little delay. You're a little bit quicker gamer than I am.
Hey, no worries, man. It definitely worth taking your time to get through this one.
And it takes a long time. I think you said you were about 120 hours. I think I was over 130 hours. This was the longest one, wasn't it?
I think initially on my first playthrough, I might have spent a little longer in Cold Steel 3.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah, give or take an hour here, hour there. Yeah, they were about the same. If not, I mean, definitely both of them longer than the first 2. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's not like the first 2 were short games. They kind of feel like they've gotten longer each title in the series, maybe a little bit. Not counting like Sky 3 was maybe a little shorter than the others, if I recall. People telling me.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't able to play Sky the Third, but yeah, I mean the Cold Steel games definitely felt longer than the Sky games. None of which are complaints. If you love the game, the longer it takes, the better.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think the Sky. We played both the first 2 of those. I don't think those should have been any different. Those were like the perfect length, and same with the Cold Steel. I feel like I felt part 3 dragged just a little bit longer than I would liked it, but still, it was amazing. And I mean, the story that these things are telling are amazing. What would you think are your overall just opinions on the game? You know where I stand on it. As in the previous podcast, I said it was my game of the year. Is that also the way you feel, or would you give it to Remake?
Well, I definitely would not give it to Remake.
Okay.
I mean, Remake was a solid game as far as games go, but I would have preferred a turn-based one where they didn't change and screw up the story.
That would have been awful nice, yeah.
That's Nomura for you.
Yeah, he can't help himself.
I was watching your live stream yesterday for the original FF7, and I wasn't sure if everybody who was in the chat had played through Remake, so I didn't want to ask the question, but I felt like asking. Hey, is this the version where Zack is dead when the game starts, or the version where he's alive?
That would have been a pretty. I'm glad you kind of didn't say that, but I feel like everybody that was there, they didn't say they hadn't. So.
Yeah, nobody responded but you, so I didn't want to say it, but that's what I was going to say.
Zack's immortal. He can never die. He's there. Yeah. Except when he does.
Yeah, I mean. Remake was a good game, don't get me wrong, but Cold Steel 4 was definitely the best one I'd played all year. I mean, obviously, if you don't already love Trails, you're not playing Cold Steel 4.
No,
you probably shouldn't even try. You're just doing yourself a disservice by starting. I mean, we all know the high barrier to entry with the Trails series.
Mm-hmm.
If you're here playing Cold Steel 4, you're already through that barrier. So I don't even think it's right to criticize the Trails game for that anymore.
No, of course not. I wish they were. Yeah, go ahead.
If you haven't made it through the barrier by now, then you're starting in the wrong place.
And as we've said before, I wish that barrier was easier to break through, that it was more accessible to players. At least, I've not played Crossbell yet, but having played Trails in the Sky made my enjoyment of this game even more. So I feel like you don't have to play those ones, but man, you sure did gain a lot. And I know people who have played all of them who have gained even more than I have.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I wish some of the older games were on easier to access platforms. So when I say barrier to entry, I mean like there's a lot of games to go through before this, assuming you have the means to play them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, myself, I haven't played Sky the Third. I haven't played the Crossbell games. I've watched YouTube videos and read story summaries of what happened. So I was able to know what was going on when Lloyd and his crew came in and all that stuff. But yeah, it's if you haven't at least played Cold Steel 1 through 3, starting here is not where you want to start. So I don't even think it's fair to criticize barrier to entry at this point.
No, absolutely.
But you're not listening to this podcast if you haven't played at least the first 3.
Yeah, you should not be. Yeah, and I think that was my biggest beef with. I mean, it's kind of like if you hadn't played all the games listed in this podcast, it's the same as what Switch is doing with only releasing 3 and then 4 in the future, and not the first 2. I think that's just really weird and kind of a dumb move on their part.
I wouldn't be surprised if we get them eventually.
Well, yeah, but why? Why are they not already out? That's what I'm kind of saying. That's kind of silly.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of it might be just because they were localized by a different company.
Oh yeah, it was Xseed. Yeah,
Xseed has both 1 and 2 on the Vita, which is where I played them for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe it has something to do with NIS America's ability to put them out on Switch. I mean, right away, like, they just started the Trails series with Cold Steel 3. So, I mean, I'd rather have them working on Cold Steel 3, 4, and Hajimari than wasting time going back and putting 1 and 2 on the Switch.
Well, that's for sure. I was more meaning for poor Switch owners. If that's your only system and your only means of playing, that's kind of a raw deal. But it is what it is, and I think you raise a valid point.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with if they ever bring Crossbell over here.
Yeah.
What company they decide to use to localize it, I think we'll tip Falcom's hand on what they're going to do moving forward.
That'll certainly be interesting. So let's get into it. Unless you had anything else you wanted to kind of mention beforehand, we're going to try to break it down, kind of actually play it through chronologically, by act and by events, and highlight those major things, and kind of just give a little recap of it all in terms of things that we want to talk about. And I think you wrote. I'll go ahead and say it. You wrote the outline for this, so I'm going to be following your lead on it. And the first thing is something you've not really done in this series, unless I guess some people might choose not to. But fighting without Reen, it's kind of a crazy experience.
Yeah, I wasn't obviously seeing what happened at the end of Cold Steel 3. It's no surprise that you were going to start this game without him.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought Yuna did a great job taking over the lead.
Yeah.
The way they kind of broke down that first act where, you got, you had Kurt and Altina with you the whole time, but then, Ash came back and then Muse came back, and then they were switching out, various old Class 7 members throughout the act. I think Yuna was a good step-in protagonist for that first act.
Absolutely. I feel like 3 is almost her story in a lot of ways of coming into her strength as a character, and I think they were building up for her to take that next step. And she kind of does it all throughout Part 4, not just at the beginning, taking a major role in things.
Yeah, I mean, knowing Falcom, yeah, they probably had that planned well in advance.
Oh, definitely. But so did you like fighting without Reen, or was it like, oh man, I can't wait till I get this guy back?
So, I mean, this was my first playthrough. I played it on normal. And I mean, it's been a while since I played a Trails game, with it being my first playthrough.
Mm-hmm.
I've replayed Cold Steel 1, 2, and 3. a second time, in New Game Plus mode. So, the difficulty, I felt the difficulty was there. Some of the mechanics that they nerfed, I had trouble with, getting everything together and building up the party. There were some parts in Act 1 that were a lot more challenging than I expected.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, not counting the very beginning with, the heroes of, I always say it wrong. Labero?
Liberal and Crossbell? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not counting that.
I didn't mean the prologue. No,
yeah.
I meant,
so that part was very easy, but yeah, getting back into it and not having, I guess, that stalwart of Reen, and like I feel like I always did the exact same thing with Reen, so it's not very fun to play with. He's just necessary to play with. So not having him as just that every day, the cancel attacks and all the things that he does with all his crafts, and you take him for granted when you all of a sudden you don't have him, and you've got, like I would never use Altina in my party. That's just not somebody I really want to have in there. And now you're forced to. It makes things a lot more difficult.
Yeah, I think, you remember the break mechanic in Cold Steel 3?
Yeah.
I think they definitely really tried to nerf that coming into Cold Steel 4.
Yes.
Honestly, I think they nerfed it a little too hard, especially for Act 1. So,
yeah.
I mean, Yuna's primary build is to break the enemies, right?
Right, exactly.
So, but they nerfed that mechanic so hard that at the beginning of the game, throughout the first act, there were bosses where I would spend, a dozen rounds breaking their break gauge, only to break them right before their turn.
Yes.
The delay so small, he recovered from break immediately, got another turn, and attacked.
Yes, it was harsh.
It made the whole thing seem like a waste. So it wasn't until I abandoned the strategy of trying to break enemies that I was really able to get through the majority of Act 1. I had to abandon that. I stopped using the Brave orders that increased break damage and just went straight for regular damage, because I felt the way that the break mechanic was nerfed, it just wasn't working. Especially that early in the game, because you don't have access to all the other orders that speed you up and allow you to really get in there and hit them while they're broken, because you just don't have access to that stuff yet.
No, you raise a great point, and I feel like in 3, yeah, they definitely wanted you to break things. That was your key to success. I kind of resisted playing that way because I guess I didn't like it. And so I think maybe at the beginning of 4, I didn't have as much of a problem, and I quickly abandoned any hopes of trying to break enemies and just, you break away from them. There's nothing more frustrating, as you say, is that you break them, it's their turn, and unless you were able to quickly spam an S-Craft or something, they were just right back to normal and hitting you. That was infuriating.
Yeah, I mean, it happened. I mean, there were times where it happened. I actually did legit get wiped once during a boss fight. I had to go back and change the strategy. I mean, once we got Reen back in the party, I cruised through the rest of the game, no problem. But you're a little farther along. You get more of an inventory built up by that point. The first act for me was definitely the toughest.
It was the toughest, and it had the most difficult fight. I mean, I'm sure there's some special fights that can be as challenging, but we talked about the difficulties of your party at that point. No Reen, and then you get to fight Osborne and Lillian. I mean, good grief, that was challenging.
So the fight with Osborne and Leanne, there's a bonus AP condition.
Yeah,
that's what I felt like. Because I'm a completionist, so I really wanted to get all the AP from that fight.
You had to.
Yeah, you've got to knock them both under 50% health or whatever the threshold was at the exact same time, or the battle ends.
That's the key. At the same time.
Yeah, because I mean, I was able to burst one down, no problem. I mean, I never got wiped out in the fight, but I had to reset it, I think about 4 times
Okay.
uh, before I was able to knock them both under at the exact same time. What made that so difficult was right before that, you have to fight Reen,
Yes.
and that fight takes a while.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, saving and reloading, like you can skip through the cutscenes, but you still got to go through the fight with Reen, which wasn't easy either.
No.
And I mean, yeah.
I talked with a lot of people, including yourself and others, who had to do the same thing. They wanted that, completionist. You got to get every single AP point in order to do that, and that was part of it. And they had to restart it 3 and 4 times. And so as I was live streaming, some people were kind of telling me that. I'm like, you know what? That doesn't matter to me because I knew I was going to mess up something along the ways and miss it anyway. And I was not going to put myself through the misery of an already extremely difficult fight, making it somehow even more difficult. Because their attacks, man, they just hit you so hard. You could be wiped out instantly in no time at all.
Yeah, I tried to fight 3 times in one night, and I eventually said, okay, it's getting too late in the day. Even if I succeed on my next fight, it's going to be well after midnight by the time I get done with all the cutscenes afterward. So yeah, I had to quit and come back the next day before I eventually was able to get it.
It was, it was so early in the game, and people were telling me this is the hardest fight that you're going to face. I'm like, wow, that's really saying something. But it's more the limitations of your party necessary than, in addition to how difficult it is. Like, if you fight that fight at the end of the game, it's not going to be nearly as challenging because you've got the game broken by that point.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So that ends, I mean, that's such a climatic ending to Act 1. You get out of there, and then kind of moving into more of Act 2, you've got to hear complaints about padding. Why don't you elaborate on that a little bit?
Before we even got the game, there were reviews out by, content creators who had early access to the game. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people were saying that Act 2 felt very padded.
Yeah.
I disagree.
I do too.
I thought it was great. I thought having Reen go back to all these places and listen to, to see everybody's reaction, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, if anything, I felt there was more padding in Act 1, and you had to take Yuna's party around to set up those, whatever you call them, the nail in the ground, triangulate Reen's position.
Yeah, there's several of those, and they took forever.
Stakes. Yeah, the mystical stakes you had to drive into the ground. I felt there was, not that I minded it. I still enjoyed Act 1. But yeah, I didn't think there was. Act 2 didn't feel padded to me at all. I mean, I really enjoy going back to every location, talking to everybody. I mean, a lot of these NPCs we've been playing with for 4 games now. So
yeah, at least 4. Some of them more than that.
Yeah. So
yeah, I have also seen that complaint from several people as I played through that Act 2 was their, maybe not the end of it, but throughout the game they didn't enjoy the majority of Act 2, and I didn't see any of that. I quite liked that. So I don't get that at all.
Yeah, I had a great time with that too. I mean, getting Reen back, being able to go through even some of the dungeons you had to go through in Act 1, you could go back and open the trial chests, and you could finally put together, for the most part, not completely, but you could put together the party you wanted. And it just felt like, through Cold Steel 3 and now maybe a third of the way through Cold Steel 4, it just feels like everything's starting to come together. Before it, heads into the big finale.
Exactly. So you finally get both Class 7s together. What was if you could pick just from those 2 groups, what was your go-to party?
Of how many people?
Let's just say 4. Just your main combatants.
So in this game, I used Reen, Fee, Laura for my main 3 at all times.
Yes.
4th one kind of rotated. In the end, I went with Crow, but in Act 2, I don't remember exactly where he joined the party, but he wasn't available for all of Act 2. So
No.
that one kind of switched out between Yuna and Kurt and
Okay.
Eustace.
Okay.
But once you got Crow, I enjoyed using him a lot in this game, much more than I did in Cold Steel 1.
I never used him in Cold Steel 1, and I guess it would have been
Neither
after
did
the
I.
rivalry that you got to use him, and he was one of those guys that I didn't use at first, and then he gets forced into your party a couple times, and I used him. I was like, oh, by the end of the game, he was a part of my main 7 or whatever.
Yeah, fighting with his dual saber, that was so much fun. I never used him in Cold Steel 1. Didn't like him. And yeah, this game he was in. He was one of the main 4 by the end of the game.
That's awesome. He was very balanced, but strong in both magic and physical. Usually you have to sacrifice one for the other, but he was a very strong overall character. I kind of felt bad I was sad at him the whole time, but
and he had speed too, which
yes.
Speed is the stat that you can use to break the game the most.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what determines the potential you can get out of a character, because if they have the natural speed, you can pretty much build them into anything you want.
Yes, absolutely. So, and I finally got on the Fee train. It started a little bit with last game, and I finally got her in there. To your chagrin, that I hadn't been using their entire series, I'm sure, but there's no bigger breaking of the game than her. It's ridiculous.
She's great.
I felt bad a little bit with her evasion and counterattacking for critical, but then I was like, you know what? I don't feel bad at all, because they set this thing up to work like that. It's not my fault.
Yeah. Hey, that's what you get for picking on the short girl.
I think at the end of the game, I had her evasion at 116 or 112%. It was insane.
Yeah, I see. I didn't really because I didn't have a dedicated magic user in my main party.
Okay.
So I kind of had everybody with. The way I typically build everybody is to get their speed as high as possible, so I can minimize the action delay between turns.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I didn't throw every single evasion quartz on Fee that I could, but I got her speed up, obviously higher than everybody else. I mean, she still had almost 80% evasion for me.
Which is practically all of it, so they're never going to hit her.
Yeah.
I love this one in particular because I think you could talk to 10 different people and they'd have 10 different parties. I used to probably play more like your party setup. Laura was always in there, of course, and Crow made his way in there. But, I chose to go with 2 magic people, actually. So I'd have Fee out front where nobody could hit her. I'd have Rain with his S-Crafts, just hitting people from afar with the slash. And then I had, Muse and Emma just destroying people with high-level magic with the EP recharge. I never ran out of magic. So it was... I felt was such a fun way for me to play and to fit my play style. But, yeah, anybody could play any number of different ways. And that's just with Class 7. You're not even talking about adding some really strong other heroes to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about having this large cast. One of the other complaints that I saw was it felt like, the cast is so big, everyone has to get their 2 cents in, and it drags down the cutscenes. Again, I didn't feel that way at all. I didn't feel that there were characters who were forced into the scenes that shouldn't have been there. I think it played very well personally. But one of the benefits of having a large cast is you can put together pretty much any party you can think of, build them any way you want. So yeah, like you said, you had 2 cannons in the back firing off magic, and be out in front, dodging all the hits. That's, if that's carries you through the game, then there you go. You're getting to play with your favorites. I mean, that's the best part about having the cast.
It really was, and my favorite part was Laura was my strongest character on the bench. So if anything should go awry, I've got a super heavy hitter with her, and then with Crow and anybody else at that point. But I felt like my bench was as strong as my starters. To make it kind of a sports analogy there, and could come in at any point in time.
I kept Eustace on my bench because he has that craft where he can put up complete immunity to the entire party, assuming they're not too spaced out. Oh, yes. I had a panic button on that. If it was going bad, I could swap him in there. Everybody gets this wall of immunity, and there you go.
Yeah, that's a pretty good backup plan. That's not bad.
There were times where, I think like one of the fights with McBurn in particular, he was just wiping the floor with everybody. I had, 3 dead characters on the field, 1 person left, swapped him for Eustace, had him put up the immunity, and then he was able to get my entire party back into shape before I sent him back to the bench.
That's awesome. Another along those same lines, if I did have the choice, I'd put Elliot in there because of his S-craft that could revive everybody instantly in that situation.
Yeah, that's another good option. Like I said, you've got all these options. You can pretty much build it however you want.
Yeah. The only complaint I would have, and you touched on it momentarily with mandatory people, that was only at the very end where you had to have a couple people and they had to be like, in your fighting lineup. I didn't love that part because the first thing you do is switch them out. But other than that, I really didn't have a complaint with the party.
Yeah, I think they did that pretty well. Like, it makes sense from a story perspective that, certain characters are fighting each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, from a narrative perspective, it makes sense that they force them to be in there. The good part about it is, you have a bench of characters. You can swap them in and then use whoever you want as soon as their first turn comes. So, even though you had to bring them with you, you still could get away with using whoever you wanted for the majority of the game.
Absolutely. So let's go to. I think this was my favorite moment, and I'd say most people would agree with the big mass gathering of every hero some people have played in every one of these 9 games together for one big epic meetup. Did it live up to the hype for you?
It did. I loved it. Everybody meets up on the Panagruel towards the end of Act 2. Just to see all these people meeting up for the first time, or seeing characters reunite where we haven't seen them have scenes with each other, some of them since all the way back in the Sky arc.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. I spent so much time talking to every single NPC between every event. It was a blast. It really was. It was a huge payoff, and it lived up to what you were hoping for through 8.5 games by this point.
It was, and I think up to that point, the voice acting was pretty hit or miss, and then it's like, oh, here's where they spent all the budget, was voice acting a lot of these, that scene, and then you talked to absolutely everybody you've ever met, and it was like all the little groups of people together, and it's like, oh, this is an interesting group, let's go see what they have to say multiple times, and oh man, it was wonderful.
And, it's similar to in Cold Steel 3, and they're having the gathering in the ballroom before the Emperor gets shot.
Spoiler! Whoa!
Right. And every time an event happened, the groups changed.
Yes.
So just like in Cold Steel 3, every time an event would happen, you'd go back around and see, oh, okay, this, so, okay, Yuna's talking to this group of people now, or Kurt's over here with these guys. I know for me, one of in particular was Estelle and Fee were talking with the girls. Over on the other side of the room, Joshua was over there talking with the boys, and Fee asks Estelle, so how far have you and Joshua gone? I laughed so hard when that came up, man. I'm telling you, that was great.
That was the best. Oh man, there was so many of those little moments, but that was a can't miss. Only Fee would ask something like that, and it was wonderful.
I mean, it was great. It really was. And then seeing Joshua and Ash meeting up for the first time, both
Yeah.
children of the Hummel tragedy. I mean, that really hits you in the feels. So some of it were fun moments, like with Fee and Estelle. Some were serious, like with Josh and Ash. I mean, yeah, the whole thing was great. It was a great way. It was a great payoff moment that I felt.
Yeah,
Getting halfway through.
so many moments it's impossible, and so many characters. I mean, the amount of firepower on that ship at that point in time, not just counting the heroes, but you've got Principal Le Guin and Wallace, and then Big Daddy Cassius finally makes his appearance,
Yeah,
and it's like, holy cow, so much firepower.
yeah. You barely even got to talk to him in the Sky Arc.
Yeah.
So he finally shows up. He finally gets some lines, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It was. But what, okay, I would say it wasn't fun, but it was definitely an experience. Was after all that, the epic 4 boss battle at the end of it, where you knew it was going to come to get a little bit crazy once they found out you were there, and the enemy hits you hard, and you got to break
Yeah,
up. Did you like that fight, or was it kind of just frustrating?
I mean, I ended up getting through it okay.
Yeah.
Was a little nervous going into it because I didn't want to wipe out halfway through one of the fights and then have to start all over again.
Off your
Um,
AP, yeah.
yeah, but from a narrative perspective, I thought it was great. Having groups of guys on one side, girls on the other, fighting. One group of antagonists over here, another group over there. It was definitely really cool the way they played that out.
It was, and it was a kind of that perfect ending and setting up. You're at such a high, and then they hit you with that. It's like And I do like it when they change things up and give you something unique in terms of a 4 fight like that back to back.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And one thing I wanted to point out, because I noticed this when I played,
Mm-hmm.
then going back through and watching other people play and listening to their opinions on it. So these battles were broken up for the most part, guys against girls, or
Yeah.
guys on one side, girls on the other.
Mm-hmm.
Guys fighting guys, girls fighting girls.
Right.
With the one exception of I forget which one of your teams was fighting them. It was the fight against Maribel, Shirley, and Campanella.
Yes, Campanella was the one. Yeah.
Campanella makes a point of saying, "Oh, all girls over here."
Uh huh.
There was an interview with Kondo about that scene,
Oh.
and thinking back, they never declare a gender for Campanella.
Hmm.
There might be something going on there. We all
Okay.
assume he's a boy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He looks like one, but the voice could go either way, really.
Yes.
So
Um. Hmm.
Kondo did not. He definitely made a point to keep his answer vague when answering that question. So there's definitely more to Campanella's backstory than we've been told so far. So it'll be interesting to see where they go in the future on that one.
It certainly will be. I mean, your first inclination is, okay, is this like a situation in Persona 4 with the detective Noito, or I believe it was posing as a guy but was actually a girl underneath it, or it could be somebody non-gender specific without really knowing how to say that. It's definitely something to it. The responses in the game would indicate there is more to him just appearing as a boy who even Estelle notices, like, you don't look a day older than we saw you all those years ago.
Right, that's the other thing. He or she doesn't age.
Yes.
So,
Hmm.
definitely something to that too. Because I mean, you can tell. Obviously, you can tell Tita's grown up, but you
Yeah.
can tell Estelle and Joshua are a little taller.
Yeah.
Agate a little taller. He's got a few more scars. You can tell that these guys are aging.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't.
No, not at all.
Campanella doesn't. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
That'll
Who knows? With some of the weird things that happen in video games, he might not even be a person. He might be
right.
a spiritual entity.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, who knows?
what we learned with McBurn further down the line, his whole spiel going on. I don't. Well, we've got we've got androids in there. I mean, there's no telling what he is or isn't, and I think the door's completely open to whatever he is. I love him as him or her, whatever you want to say, as a character, because he gets under Yuna's skin so easily, and everybody else's.
Yeah, he's a great antagonist for sure.
Yeah, I think he's going to get what's coming to him eventually.
Yeah.
So that was such a great ending. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that point. I'd almost actually forgotten about that. So that leads into Act 3, which, if I recall, I think that was the longest act. Do you feel like?
Yeah, it sure felt like it to me.
Yeah.
Because again, I took my time going through here. So every time something major happened, I would go back to all the towns. I would talk to all the people. Every time you're picking your destination on the map from your ship, it would say new.
Yes.
Like there's something new here. I would go to every single one of them and check them all off. So
right.
I definitely think that I put the most amount of time in Act 3.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the rivalries, you just got everything else going on. The war's stepping up. The world's on fire, but there's time for side quests. Don't worry, we got plenty of time for that.
Even right before you head to the final dungeon. I mean, everybody's going to war. Everybody's going to war. They're all about to blow each other up. But hang on, let me go finish this cycle.
Yeah, at least they weren't like I lost my cat type side missions at the end. They were at least meaningful, at least most of them. But
yeah, I felt like they were.
There wasn't nothing too unnecessary. So we're getting into the rivalries, and we're getting into some nitty gritty stuff where that it's not going to end well for individuals. There has to be some dying going on. Did you find the rivalries to be difficult? Did you enjoy them? I think they were fine. I didn't love them per se, but it was pretty cool to see those story arcs go through.
Yeah, it was fun to see the storylines with Rutger and Leanne come to a close. I felt like the Divine Knight battles, I personally didn't have an issue with them. I felt like I could see why people would, because if you're not keeping up with the courts that you can put in your Divine Knights.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just going to wipe the floor with you.
Oh yeah.
So, and I was playing along with a guide, so I didn't have to waste time guessing where the weaknesses were.
Yes.
If you're wasting turns and, missing and they're countering, and I mean, they can really wipe the floor with you if you're not careful. So I could see why people would have trouble with them. I didn't. And I did feel that the way that they laid out the battles was done very well. You got to fight, for Rutger, you got to fight Rutger, in human form before you guys went and then did the rivalry. So I thought that was done very well. I really liked, being able to do that because it brought a little more background to each, to both Rutger and Leanne, because you got to see their crafts and their moves and all that. I like the way that played out.
I didn't like the actual fights the Divine Knight fights, I feel like they were all, and they've been setting these things up for a while. There's a lot of guarding, a lot of defending, and picking your moments. And yeah, if you did not keep up and get those high level courts, you would be dead. If you attacked when you should have been guarding, you'd be dead. I feel like they just took a long time because you had to go through that process. You have to understand that's the only way to win. It's going to take some time, and you cannot rush through them at all.
They were definitely some long fights. One of the strategies that I used to where I didn't have to guard so much was I would, when I saw, there were some fights that had, the main boss and then a couple of ads where, they were just minor enemies. But when the main boss was going to come up with something powerful,
yeah.
If my support unit was going to get a turn, I would usually swap in one of the support units that could put up a barrier.
Okay.
So you could weather that attack without taking any damage. So that was one of the strategies that I used to avoid having a guard over and over. I think Milliam had one.
Yeah.
Tina might have had one. It might have been somebody else. So that was one thing that I did.
That's pretty smart. I wish you'd have told me that before I started playing.
Yeah, I picked up on that one back in, I don't know, probably Cold Steel 2. I think it was Milliam who had the immunity art she could use when you were fighting in battles with the Divine Knights. And I've been using her, either her or one of the other options ever since.
That's pretty smart. So I felt bad for Fee, of course, with Rigger, and that the father figure that she never had, and then he dies, she loses him, and then he comes back, and then he dies again. It's like, good grief. I say kid. She's not a kid anymore. I thought that was pretty rough, but it was interesting to see the dynamic between, just speaking on Ruger in particular. Throw Sarah out there. They're, her paying respects and all that. And then what did you pick up on this? And, oh gosh, I forget her name, the weapons dealer for you guys, and her mom. And how
Django?
Yes. And there was one scene where Leo and I want to say Zeta Hort, but that's Kingdom Hearts. The other Xeno, they were at her mom's and having a scene, and there was some sort of minor implication that there might have been a connection with Ruger, possibly even being Jingo's dad. Did you pick up on that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it was a deep draw, and it didn't. You'd have to go back and watch that, but there was some hints that could have actually been the case, because she didn't know her father. Obviously, her dad was not around, and the guys were there. They'd done business together for a long time. She admired him and wanted to pay respects too. So it wasn't like it was like I felt bad because it was a long time ago, but definitely like that could have actually been the case, perhaps.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. One of the things I did pick up on with Django was her dog Cerberus.
Yes.
So she runs the weapon shop on your ship late in the game, right?
Yeah.
So it was between one of the major events. I was talking to her, and she said she was going to throw Cerberus off the side of the ship and have him parachute down and sell weapons on the front line. She's going to have him sell weapons on the front line or wherever it was. And I was just like, oh my God. He's going to have the dog parachute off the ship.
Yeah, of course. It was hilarious.
Oh,
what did Ring say? Like, that's not the weirdest thing I've ever heard, or something out of this kid. Like, oh yeah, please don't do that. Don't.
That's her for you.
Oh man, Cerberus was great. I loved it when he was manning the counter. He'd sell you weapons too. He was a good dog.
Yeah, he was.
But yeah, so I felt bad to see that one go, and Fee had to deal with that all over again. And but I still liked it.
Then you get to Leanne's her scene, And
Oh
I
man,
mean, the way she comes out, oh man,
that was rough. Didn't see that one coming.
neither. Yeah, he just pops up behind her. Rufus does, and yeah, just runs her through.
You didn't think you could like Rufus any less, and then he does that.
Yeah, he really becomes a despicable character. That's for sure.
Yeah, I
I
think
should
I
feel
started.
bad for you.
Oh gosh, yeah, and that was. We'll talk about that at the end. But it's like Rufus started off as somebody who I didn't hate, and then he just got like worse with every single game, more cunning and more couldn't understand why he was doing what he was doing necessarily, and I'm sure neither could Eustace. But yeah, that
You know what? Honestly, the Iron Bloods, even now, I still don't understand why they were doing what they were doing. I really
no,
don't get weak-minded. I mean, I get that you're indebted to this guy. They all have their different reasons.
yeah,
But how weak-minded do you got to be to do some of the things that they did? You know,
to the very end,
they just
yeah.
they just blindly follow him, do commit all these despicable acts. It's just.
Yeah,
I don't
at
know.
some point,
You're supposed to like Claire. You're supposed to like Lecter.
yeah, but you
You
can't.
know, I mean, yeah. At the end, I just can't stand any of them. It's like you guys have a backbone and stand up for what you think is right, not just
Yeah.
because this guy's telling you what to do.
The only one that did was Milliam, and she wasn't even human. So
Right. And she died for it.
she did, she did. We'll talk about that at the end as well. But yeah, that was rough seeing it, but I guess it kind of had to happen. I mean, she was going to die one way or another, being an immortal. So it's kind of the way it goes, I guess. So
I wasn't surprised that both her and Rutger ended up dying, but the way Leanne went out was definitely a shocker.
it was, and I guess that kind of made
was,
it a little more interesting in terms of the fights ahead. But
yeah, and it was really nice to see how everybody was paying their respects
absolutely,
afterwards. I mean, you even saw the one scene where everybody from Ouroboros, whether they had left or left the society or were still in, they all gathered together to pay their respect. I thought that was really cool.
yeah. I guess they mentioned later the only one that didn't was McBurn, I guess, but
Yeah.
I guess he had some reasons for it. Well, the last note that you've got here is, and I'll let you speak on it. The thoughts on the divergent laws. That's a that's a good topic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any thoughts on them because they haven't really given us anything to go off of yet. It's just there's definitely more out there than what we've seen. Like it's like, I mean, you saw some of it with McBurn, where there's definitely a different plane of existence where he comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Like off the coast of Ereboni on the Zemirian continent, like there's water out there, but where it goes, well, nobody knows because just for some reason nobody ever goes out that way.
Yeah. Well, I think they even mentioned that they can't. Like, it doesn't matter how far they go, they reach nothing or something like that.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, there's definitely more going on, and I mean, they just use the divergent laws to explain a few other things, particularly with the Hexen clan, and I'd be interested to see what those are later on in the series, and then coming back to replay some of these games to see if any more pieces start falling into place. That'll be a lot of fun.
It really will be, and I don't think I was expecting anything along those lines with this game. Like, getting into Cold Steel, I kind of thought it was going to be like, okay, this kind of classical, not medieval setting, but traditional JRPG setting, and just going through it, and then like each moment there's more technology, there's more lore going on, and by the end of this you're talking about parallel worlds, and even some sort of idea of like either a dome or like a confined setting that this world is stuck in, almost like it's created. And
like a snow globe.
Yeah, like a snow globe, exactly. And it's like there's some super big ideas going on top of other big ideas to begin with, but the whole, fact that these Divine Knight battles have been going on for countless times over and over again. That was just one history of the world. So it's like, what is going on?
And nobody remembers them because every time they fight, it gets wiped from the minds of all the people, and Divine Knights just go back to sleep for a while. That's part of the divergent laws, which, obviously the Divine Knights are gone after the end of this game, so we probably won't get a reason as to why that happens. But yeah, it's just something else to ponder over until they explain a little more. Yeah, like you were saying, with different planes of existence and parallel worlds and all that stuff, makes me wonder. It makes me wonder if Nomura interned at Falcom for a while.
It does have some eerie parallels to all that kind of craziness that's going on there, or maybe it's just like a Japanese idea that we don't quite understand as well.
It could be, but yeah, I mean, every story he gets his hands on tends to go in goofy directions. He worked for Falcon for a little bit there in the last few years.
Let's hope not, because this is going weird places anyway. I don't want to go that kind of weird places. I'm good on that.
Exactly.
So I did not see. I knew there was at some point going to be, a point where you'd have to choose, a romantic interest, and I did not know it was going to be at Michelin. How do you say that? The amusement park. And so I thought that was yeah. So I thought that was fantastically done. The way they built, a whole nother chapter into this one setting, and getting to hang out with people and all the fun activities. What did you had a bunch of girls that you had interest in? Obviously, you get on to little mini dates with them. Did you do the funniest part was the drinking contest though?
Oh, the little side quest with Sarah and Sharon. Yeah, I did that one.
Did you get like a bunch of them? I think I had like 9 people total.
I don't remember. I know I ended up picking, because there was some bonus AP associated.
Okay.
So whatever choices it were that resulted in the bonus AP. But yeah, I think they did like 3 rounds of 3.
Yes.
If I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I thought it was cool. You had a mix of characters you use in your party, and then you had some, I think like Adele from the
the gardening club. Yeah.
You could get in there. Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a fun little side quest. Really think it just felt like a little break from the intensity of the game.
Yeah.
This whole chapter was dedicated to, and I think that was really cool. It felt, not only did the characters get to sit and unwind, but it kind of felt like you did too. You just sit back, enjoy some of the story. Almost 9 complete games by this point. We're invested in these characters, and getting to see some of their arcs come to a close. Just getting to see the way these narratives play out is a lot of fun. Particularly for me was seeing Oliver and Shara get engaged. That was awesome.
My. That was the best moment. Like, I thought it might happen, but when it finally did, I was like, yes, it's happening. Finally, he's settling down. The debaucherous prince has found his wife.
I thought that was great. I only wish we could have used Shara in our party a little bit.
Oh man, that was probably the only one I was sad not to be able to use at some point in time.
Yeah. I never put Sharon in my party, or Duvalie, or any of those guys. I would have liked to have gotten to play with Sharon.
Yeah, because she was tons of fun to play with during Sky. So I think she would have been, start whipping people around. Oh, it's so funny. That would have been a lot of fun. You said it right. Just a breather for a minute, because these games are so intense. You got so much going on, just to take a mental break and have some fun. So the big question is, of course, who did you choose? Did you stick faithful throughout the entire series with your romantic interest?
Yeah, I picked Fee in the end.
Okay.
I felt like out of all the characters, she had the best background story.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, I had the most fun with her in battle. So yeah, I picked her at the end. What I felt was really cool going forward. From the point that you pick whoever it is you pick throughout
Mm-hmm.
the end of the game, there's changes in dialogue where whoever you pick,
Yes.
you're reacting to that.
Finally.
I mean, I know you didn't pick Fee, so you didn't see these, but there was one in the final dungeon where Reen is kind of freaking out about having to tell Zeno and Leo that he's dating their sister.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was really cool. I wish you could have gotten to go farther in the game, having your romantic choice locked in, just
Yeah.
to see it play out even more than it did. I thought it was a really nice touch.
That's awesome. Yeah, there wasn't any, because of course I picked best girl Emma, and we're not going to hold Fee against you. That's okay. You can make your own your own choices. But there was a handful of little nods of scene, but I don't think there was any special scene per se like that. That's pretty cool that they gave that to you.
Yeah, like I said, I thought it was a nice touch. I was watching one of the videos from your playthroughs, particularly the ending, where you see Reen walking out of his dorm room, and there's
Uh-huh.
for you it was Reen and Emma.
Yeah,
For me it was Reen and Fee.
that's cool.
So that I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and the text I guess is going to be was from Fee for you. So
I will say that I think it's to the series' overall detriment, though, to have a canon romance.
yes, in this instance, yes.
Because moving forward, I mean, are they going to just assume that it's Reen and Elisa moving forward? Are they just not going to have anybody for Reen? Because not everybody picked Elisa.
Who would pick her?
I mean,
I don't know.
the game was pushing you to pick her.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, they probably they need assumed lead female. I actually read in one of the interviews with, I don't know if it was Brendo or one of the other guys, but Lisa was originally going to be the protagonist of the Cold Steel.
Really? That's interesting.
Before they decided to make the protagonist a male character.
That would have been very different. Yeah.
But I thought that Estelle and Joshua, their romantic arc across the games has been a great story to watch it play out, and you're just not going to get that with Reen.
No,
And,
you can't.
If they decide to do something like that with Reen and Elisa because she is the assumed female choice, then there's like you and me who pick someone else. They're going to be like, oh, well, that kind of stinks,
It is, and if I don't know if you noticed this at the very end during the normal ending, Elisa has the strongest reaction, and like Emma consoles her. It almost felt like they were, making you think that was the choice again. The game has done that. The series has done that many times where it assumes that it's Elisa, even though I don't know anybody who's actually. Maybe one person that actually picked her. I think most people actually go a different direction. And you have, especially in this one, you have many different directions. Was there anybody else that you were like, maybe?
Oh, the harem continues to grow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could even go the princess route. Like I was almost tempted to go that way just to see how it would turn out. I think that would be pretty interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I like most of the female characters. So they all kind of intrigue me a little to see, okay, I wish I could see what happens here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so Laura would have been my second option.
Mm-hmm.
I always liked Alphen. I don't have anything against Elisa. I just didn't feel she was as interesting.
Yeah.
I don't like to use her in battle because I don't think she's particularly good. So I was never really hot for teacher. So I wasn't going to pick Sarah. You
That would have been
know,
a good choice, I think. I think it would have been interesting.
I mean, I did save and reload a few times to pop some trophies, so I did get to
Okay.
see the romance scene play out for a lot of the characters. But once you get past there, just to see all the little tweaks that they make to the dialogue, obviously, I only got to see that with Fee.
Hmm.
She's the one that I picked, for the end game scenes. But and the only female character I really don't like is Muse.
Ah, don't break my heart like that. Come on.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
I
know
think she's just too, she's a
there's a
little
lot
too
of them like that.
forward with her adult features.
She is, and I was gonna say the only one I don't like is Elise. So, but that's a different
Oh
reason
yeah,
for that.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, can't be doing that with your sister. That's just I know they're not blood related. That's
Oh,
fine, but gross.
Estelle and Joshua did it, so it
Different.
worked for
It was
them.
it was different though. That was not they were
Was it
much
though?
older. They were much older when Joshua showed up.
I don't know. I don't think they were that much older.
Well, but they weren't raised as okay. Reen and Elise were under the impression they were blood brother and sister. That was never the case with Joshua and Estelle. They knew that they
Yeah,
weren't related.
that's true.
So that's how I'm justifying it. Okay, it's still there are still both weird things. Of course, I understand that, but
Well, you know what? I guess they've got a different take on what's okay and what's not okay over in Japan. I don't know.
that has been very well noted that the brother sister thing has been a Japan
It's
oddity
more
for
of
a
a
while.
guideline, more of a guideline than a law.
No, it is very odd to say the least. You mentioned Laura, who was the one that surprised me the most. You're in the cave and she goes right up there and smooches you, and she was by far like other than Muse, like the only one that really did that.
Yeah, I remember that scene, and I remember thinking, wow, because all the bonding events with the girls obviously played out a little differently, a little more seriously, and than some others. And yeah, she was the only one who went right up there and planted one on them. At least out of the scenes that I saw, I didn't get to see
Yeah,
every one of them. But yeah, she was. I mean, I thought it was a great scene. I was really touched by the narrative of the character and what
hmm,
she was going through at the time.
yeah,
Everything with her father and all that. So, you know, yeah, she definitely went right after him.
yeah. She
She's
didn't
one of
hold
the kids.
anything back.
She's one of the few. She's one of the few whose trophy I did not get to watch the scene for at the end. So when I
Okay.
play the game through a second time, I'll definitely be looking forward to seeing those scenes.
Yeah, there was some definitely interesting options, and I thought that they handled that pretty well. And it thankfully they respected your choice this time and did show you a couple of things afterwards. Because I know it would have been very difficult to do that. Like, okay, I know you picked Fee and I picked Emma in part one, and that was my choice in every game. Like, but it kind of felt like you were starting over every game as well. That they didn't care
Yeah,
what your choices were.
yeah, there were definitely some areas where it felt like you were starting from scratch, especially between Cold Steel 2 and Cold Steel 3. Because at the end of Cold Steel 2, I mean, if you pick Elisa, you guys are practically a married couple.
Yes.
So 3, it's like, hey, nice to meet you. You know?
Who
Oh,
are you again?
yeah. Oh, yeah, right. Didn't I see you once before? That kind of thing. I mean, there were some dialogue changes between Cold Steel 1 and 2 that carried over if you transferred your save data.
Yeah.
Um, I don't remember if there were between 3 and 4 or not. Um, but yeah, and that's one of the things, like I said, where I think having the harem aspect plays to the series' overall detriment. Like, it would be one thing if it was just these 4 games and the story was done.
Hmm.
It's not done. You're going to see these characters again. So, when we get to play Hajimari for the first time, for me, Reen and Fee aren't. probably aren't going to be a couple anymore.
Probably not.
You know, so I mean, again, I think a canon romance would have worked better, but it is what it is. I mean, I still enjoyed playing.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a minor part of the overall experience. I don't think like it's, in Persona it's important, but I think they were both kind of similar. Like they're there, but it's not going to make that big of a difference. Just it's a personal thing. That's really that's the only thing.
I mean, I definitely agree with you, but even still, with Persona, I mean, when you get to the end of a game, that's it. It's over.
Yep.
So, you can put the game away thinking, yeah, that was who I picked at the end of the game, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
In the Trails series, it's not going to be like that.
No, not at all. The only thing I liked with Persona is if you maxed them out, you got that final form of their Persona, and it made them a lot stronger in battle, and your bonds made you stronger, different abilities, whereas it was purely kind of on the surface level for Trails. And that.
Well, not to rub salt in the wound, but you actually got to strengthen and evolve the Personas one more time if you made it to the final semester.
Oh my!
In Royal,
that wound had finally closed, and you just rip it back open.
Yep.
Oh, my very public love and failings of the third semester. One of these years, I'll put another 140 hours into it and finally get it, but not today.
I remember I played Persona 5 Royal for the first time after I finished Cold Steel 4. I remember hearing you talk about how you missed out on the final semester. And again, I was using a walkthrough, so I knew that you had to max out certain confidants in order to get it.
Yeah.
So I knew that going in, so I knew I wouldn't miss it. I'm just reading like the prompts and because there's a lot of tutorials and stuff in Persona 5 Royal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I know you got to max out the counselor, and they tell you like 3 times to do that.
They did. I just ignored it. It's okay.
I mean, he's not a really fun character to be spending your time with.
He's not.
So I can definitely see why you missed it. Yeah, they tell you a few times in order, hey, you got to talk to this guy before November 18th or whatever it is. And
yeah. Oh, and I just assumed it was he's leaving, so you'll want to talk to him before he leaves if you care about him. Not you need to talk to him because he's leaving because you need that for the third semester.
They're going to lock you out of the final part of the game if you don't.
You had to do a little bit with Agechi too, right? Was that a part of it?
I don't think you had to max out his rank in order
to
get
max,
to the third
yeah.
But I think there were solutions to his persona that you couldn't access if you didn't proceed as far as the game would allow. I think it was only the counselor that locked out the final semester.
Yeah. That was it. That did it. Jake, I want to do something here, and we didn't talk about this beforehand, but I think we're going a little bit long on this, and I think we're having a fun discussion. So what I want to do here is we're going to wrap up this episode because we're over an hour right now, and then we'll come back with part 2 of this next week, talking about the finale and all the different other lores. I think we're going to have an entire podcast just talking about that alone. Is that cool? Is that cool with you? You come back for the next one?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So why don't you tell the people what they need to do, and we'll wrap up this.
All right. Yeah. Well, hey, until next week, get back out there and level up.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is the I believe this is the first time we've done this before. This is part 2 of a podcast. We started last time with our Trails of Cold Steel 4 spoiler cast, and we were having so much fun, I decided to break it up into 2 weeks worth of content. We got through the first 3 acts and even into the Eventide portion of the game, so it is time to knock out the finale and then all the stuff that goes on afterwards. So, Jake, you're back for more fun. Are you doing all right, buddy?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me back on.
Of course. It wouldn't be much of a spoiler cast if I just said to get out of here for part 2, but you've got a lot of insight into some things, and I'm so glad you're able to join us again. One quick thought that I've heard tossed around as we get into this one, and I don't even know how they would have done it, but I've heard a lot of people say that Cold Steel 1 and 2 should have been the Erebonian Civil War. That should have been a series. And then 3 and 4 should have been the Great Twilight, and that should have been a series. Or do you think it's obviously just fine the way it was with 4 parts?
So, like, you mean there only being 2 games?
Yeah, kind of like Crossbell. Obviously, there's continuation of characters, but
I think they would have had to cut out so much, to make the Civil War fit in one game and then the Twilight to fit in one game.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really imagine how, like looking where you were at the beginning of Cold Steel 3 with Reen becoming a teacher for the first time.
Yeah.
And then halfway through it, Milliam gets killed and you lose Reen. And then, I think it worked so much better having it split up into 4 games.
Me too.
I spent between 110 and 120 hours on Cold Steel 3 and then another on Cold Steel 4. There's no way you could put 220 hours onto one game.
No way. It'd have been insane.
They would have had to have cut so much content. I'm really glad they did it the way they did.
Yeah. I guess you could say, you could look at it and say that it could be like a director's cut of it and cut out a bunch of side stuff and make them shorter. But in terms of overall game, I don't think there's any way. I understand what they were saying, that those 2 stories are connected and these 2 are more connected. And with their, there's a year and a half in between 2 and 3, whatever. There's a break in between them, whatever it is. And
it's about a year and a half. I think one of the things that made it work so well is how quickly they got all these games out.
Yes.
Not the localization. It's a different story. But Falcom itself, making the games, they put these out one right after the other. When was Final Fantasy 13 released?
Oh, dear God. It was something a long time ago.
It's been over 10 years, and we're still waiting for 16.
Yeah.
Falcom will have a dozen more games out by then. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been a more valid complaint if they had taken 4 years between games. They didn't. Cold Steel 4 came out a year after Cold Steel 3.
Yeah.
So I think that's about right. It reminds me of back in the day when Square Enix put out 7, 8, and 9. They all came out within 1 year of each other.
That was fantastic. Yeah, they were very quick.
Yeah, Falcom goes to show here, you don't need 10 years of production between major entries in a franchise, not counting 14.
No.
You don't need 10 years between games to make it work.
I think, Falcom's about a year and a half, it seems like. And of course, they start, as soon as the next one, they don't have to rebuild the engine. Obviously, they did, between 2 and 3, but Final Fantasy is just the worst example of how often you should release a title.
Yeah, it is. And the way they're pumping out these games, they've already got Hajimari's already out. Now they're talking about first game in the next arc that, they'll probably get in Japan sometime before the end of 2021. They're pumping these out quick. It's
supposed to be out this summer, so.
Yeah, look at 7 Remake. We were talking about that last week. It's a perfect example. It'll be a couple years before we get Remake Part 2. Who knows how long it'll be before they get the final part out? You know what I mean?
I don't want to think about it.
Right, exactly. Thank God we already know where that story ends and how it's supposed to end anyway.
You had to rephrase that.
Yeah.
How it's
Imagine
supposed
having to
to
wait
end.
so long between Cold Steel 3 and 4 to find out what happened to Reed. I mean, that would be honestly. It reminds me of having to wait for the cliffhanger at the end of first chapter in Sky
Oh man.
because the localist for second chapter. Now that really did take that long. I played Sky back on the PSP and had to wait years before I could play second chapter before it was localized. Oh, I mean, thank God we didn't have to wait that long between 3 and 4.
No, no. I mean, the wait between 1 and 2 was not bad at all. It felt like it, but that was more the localization. That really wasn't, all on Falcom. So,
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of the way I feel about it too. So we got all the way through the Eventide, the romance, and all that fun stuff in part 1. We are at the finale. The stuff has hit the fan. It is go time. Not before some side quest, of course, but the big awesome event with the salt pails. What did you think about breaking up into these uber groups of fighters and getting to fight through that?
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I thought getting to do the liberal team for one fight or for one wave, and then the crossbell team, and then a few others here and there. I thought that was really cool. The only part I didn't like was having to do the 5 boss fights back to back.
Oh man, that was terrible.
Not because it was hard, because it really wasn't. The parties were very overpowered.
Yeah.
It's just once you didn't know going into it that you were going to have 5 fights back to back to back all the way through like that.
No clue.
So, if you're just powering through and think, oh, there's no boss fight here, once you get done with that 5th one, okay, maybe I want to quit for the day. And oh no, here comes 5 boss fights and hours of cutscenes. You're gonna be playing a little while longer than you thought. So yeah, I would have preferred that the boss fights have been at the end of each one.
Yeah, me too.
Particularly because your brave points carry over between the fights.
Yes.
So when you end the 5th salt pail and then you go back to having to fight boss with your first team, now it's kind of clicking. Okay, yeah, I'm going to have to fight all these guys, 5 fights in a row. I better save some brave points at the end of the first fight for the beginning of the second one, depending on your strategies. And yeah, I would have preferred that they had broken those up. But overall, I mean, I did like getting to play with each one. The fight with the one-handed swordsman, Arcade, was really cool.
Oh yeah.
Getting to use Vita as an overpowered Uber mage was pretty cool.
That was the fun. I mean, the liberal team was amazing, but I think the OP team.
Yeah, I mean, the liberal team was my favorite just because I played Sky and I love Sky.
Yes.
One of the highlights of the game for me, but it was a lot of fun.
It was the only thing. Yeah, like I said, or like you said, the 5 fights back to back. They were honestly they were simple fights. Going into it, you thought it was going to be difficult.
Yeah, they really weren't, especially with the final team with Aurelia and Arcade. The guy really never stood much of a chance. But yeah, it just would have been nice to have a break between each one where you could save, come back. Like if you needed to, go to bed or go to work.
Oh yeah. Well, that was just it. Like I was lucky in the fact, I've been live streaming and I've had some dedicated viewers who, by that point, they'd already beaten the game because I was slow as a turtle. But they had definitely, there was more than a few times they're like, we know it's getting late. Are you sure you're able? Because it's going to be a while. And I was able to save before that final fight, or heading into that, and I didn't have to stay up an extra 2 hours. That doesn't work out well for some people. I agree it should have been one after the other. I actually didn't think you were going to have to do it the way they set it up. I thought it was going to be some sort of like cutscene. They just plow through it because they were so overpowered. You didn't gain any experience fighting the people there. The treasure chests were just simple items. I really just ran through them to get to the boss fight because there was no point in leveling up at all. You couldn't level up.
Yeah, I mean there were some of them were the boss fights at the end took longer than the dungeons to get to the boss.
It did.
Yeah, I mean the dungeons were simple, which wasn't a problem. I mean, if really the only reason to drag out the dungeon was just if you wanted to play with those characters more.
Yep.
I definitely fought more battles with Estelle and Joshua's team than I did with Lloyd's.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I have more of an attachment to the Sky team than I do the Crossbell team.
Yeah.
And
I picked them first. So I was fighting through, and then I quickly realized, we're not gaining any experience. They're as strong as they're going to be. So just get through this and get through it. But I mean, what a cool way to unlock the final dungeon. And all at once you got all these teams. It would have been nice, I guess, to have those people with you. But this is Class 7's story. They were going to be the ones that were going to have to lead the final charge. And
it was a nice way to kick off the final dungeon. And when we get to Hajimari, then we'll be able to use these guys however we want.
I think I read that. Yeah, you're going to have like 50 people to choose from, and there's no way. There's no way you can make a party that way. I don't know what I'd even begin to do.
Honestly, just pick your favorites. I mean, that's really it. Like, I can't imagine there's going to be a team that won't work. So, I mean, honestly, I would just say pick your favorites.
Yeah.
Have fun with the characters you like the most. I can't imagine a scenario where you're going to put together a team that's not going to be able to, beat the game.
No, but it's like you have so many favorites by that point. How do you narrow it down to just 4, in your starting lineup?
Sure adds replay value.
Extreme replay value. But we'll have a long time to talk about Hajimari when it comes. Hopefully it comes this year. My goodness. What about that final dungeon? I knew it was going to take a while, but that was a long, long trek through that bad boy.
Yes, it was. I feel that the way they broke it up was pretty good. You fought one level of the dungeon, then you had a rivalry fight, and you went through the next level of the dungeon, then you had another boss fight. That broke it up pretty well. You got to go back to your little central hub in that garden there, between each one. So you could rest, relax, save, take a break if you needed to. I know it took me multiple days to get through the dungeon. I certainly didn't do it all in one playthrough.
No.
So it was nice that you could pause in between each fight and take a break if you needed to.
Absolutely. And finally get to knock some sense into Lecter and Claire, who, oh my gosh, these people just frustrate me to no end. And it was good to finally do that, and that you didn't have to kill them. So that was good. I was worried something bad was going to happen at the end, but they finally seemed to come to their senses at the very end.
Yeah, I mean, they, like I said last week, they just seem to kind of blindly follow this guy for no reason. And they feel bad about what they're doing. I'm like, well, then stop doing it.
Just stop.
So, yeah, it felt nice to kind of finally knock them out and say, okay, you know what? By the time you guys wake up, it's all going to be over.
Although somebody that we know from Sky has a personal vendetta, who's going to knock some sense into Lecter some more. I can't wait till Chloe finally sees him and slaps him upside the head. Yeah,
they. I think I feel like not being able to play third chapter because I don't I don't use my PC to play games. I think I felt like I was missing out on something because I know there was a lot of backstory between them back in their days at the Genis Royal Academy, between Chloe and Lecter and the rest of their little group. So
Yeah, I can't wait to finally play that. It's weird that we're in that same situation of we neither one of us played Crossbell or Sky the Third, and neither one of us like to game on our PC, so we're kind of in that weird position of not being able to see that. But I've heard he is Lecter in particular is just treacherous, especially in the Crossbell series. He's awful.
See, I don't think it's so much that he's awful, like a bad guy. I think it's just he's up to his usual tricks, just like in the Cold Steel arc.
Okay,
You know, I don't think it's that he's treacherous and evil.
okay,
I
that's
think it's
good.
more just pulling the strings that Osborne wants, and you know, I don't know. Hopefully someday we'll get to play at least the Crossbell games.
I think so. I mean, you can now, so that's good. But it
Yeah,
surely would be nice to
yeah,
get that updated PS4 version in our hands, and maybe
or,
Sky
yeah,
eventually as well.
or even Switch.
That'd be perfect. I mean,
Yeah.
those games would run great on it because they're not that
Yeah,
demanding.
yeah. I mean, I certainly don't need them remade into full 3D models like the Cold Steel games to play them. I'm
No.
fine just playing them the way they look, because they look pretty similar to the Sky Arc.
Yeah, no, I had no
I
problem playing Sky. I thought it was very charming.
yeah, I loved it. I replayed it this past year, over the summer. I think it was. I played
Hmm.
first and second chapter again on the Vita. Um, yeah, I loved it. So I certainly don't need a remake or even a remaster. I mean, just watching videos from the Geofront translation, just
Yeah,
the way it looks great.
it
Um,
does
so
and sounds
yeah, just
great.
to get an official localization on a platform that's more easily accessible would be fantastic.
It would be. It's kind of hard to lug your laptop around and play on it. It'd be nice to your nice little Switch, which is made for games like that anyway. That would be perfect.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I don't have a real particularly powerful PC. I'm lucky I'm able to connect on Discord and do that. So,
we've
you
got that
know,
technology mastered. That's about it. Now, what did you feel the relationship was between Sherry and Cedric? Was it a brother sister type of deal? Obviously, we know if you paid attention to Sherry, she tends to prefer the girls. I believe is her indication.
oh, Shirley, yeah,
Yeah.
she, yeah, I think Cedric is going to have a bit of a disappointment when he finally works up the stones to make a pass at Shirley. He'll be
Yeah.
disappointed to find out that he's not exactly team she's playing for a different team.
Yeah, so I think there's some mixed signals that
Well,
she definitely thinks of him like a little brother and looking out for him, and he has a
yeah,
crush on
not
her.
not that it would surprise me if she, went both ways, but
Right.
because she's nuts. She's
Oh
crazy.
gosh.
You know.
Yeah, that's another thing that I think she's a big player in the Crossbell games, if I'm not mistaken, and just insane.
And I think she's more of a kid in the Crossbell arc.
Okay.
So I think that, like we were talking about before with the characters from Sky arc growing up, I think
Hmm.
she's another one where you can kind of tell that there's definitely an evolution as far as age progression goes between, at least from what I could tell, the character sprite in the Crossbell games.
And I
I
want to see
definitely
kind
think
of. Uh,
maturity.
I want to see what the brother sister relationship is between her and Orlando, like where they had the old mercenary days, and obviously there was some sort of falling out, and her dad, or I guess their dad, what? No, are they cousins? Is that what it
Cousins,
is?
yeah.
That's it, cousins. Not that's it.
So the war god that was killed in the fight with Rutger,
Yeah,
that's Orlando's father,
that's it. Okay,
I think.
or Shirley's
And
dad.
I think that was I don't know.
There's so much to keep track of.
Yeah, and that guy's brother, who is the one causing all the trouble in the Crossbell arc, that's the father of the other one. So I think they're
Oh,
cousins.
I got you. That would make sense. Okay. That would make a lot of sense. So yeah, that'll be
Well, yeah,
interesting to see.
you get to fight Cedric and Shirley, at the end of their level of their dungeon, and then you get into the rivalry with Cedric, and you finally get to wipe the smirk off that guy's face.
I'm getting tired of doing that.
Yeah, I've been waiting a long time for that one.
I mean, there's a lot of ungrateful players in this game, but he is, I think, the biggest. Just, oh my gosh, we saved you, we saved you, and Crow dies because of it, and you're just going to keep going down this path.
Yeah, he's definitely got some growing up to do. That's for sure.
And he does. As do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to wait on what happens with him later on?
We can wait for the post game scenes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll keep that in order then, because that's some interesting stuff for sure. I felt like that battle wasn't as challenging as I thought it would be. I thought he would be stronger.
I think that was one of the easier ones of the final boss fights in the final dungeon. And yeah, I'm with you, because I Testarossa was the main Divine Knight antagonist of the first two Cold Steel games.
Right.
Its power was corrupted, and it just felt like one of the lesser ones in this one.
Yeah, it was odd. I wasn't quite sure how that was going to go, and I didn't expect it. It was kind of like, oh, all right, we'll just breeze right through this then, on to the next. Speaking of fights that I knew it was going to be difficult, I actually didn't have that much problem with McBurn.
Yeah, the demon one you're talking about, where he trains ones and you finally find out that he's from another plane.
Yeah, all that.
I didn't have much problem with that one either. And then, the same with the fight with Campanella and Maribel. You fight them again.
Right.
I didn't have too much trouble with that one either.
No, that was fine.
It'll be more interesting to see what happens with McBurn moving on.
Oh, yes. Well, he seemed to be very upset and was going to go back and have some words with some peoples in Ouroboros, so that should be interesting.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing, why he is the way he is, how he got to this plane. So it'll be fun to see what happens with him. I don't think we're going to have to wait too long, because I'm pretty sure he's in Hajimari.
Yeah, I'm nearly positive he is, so that'll be good to see right away. I think I didn't have a problem with the fights in particular. It was he fixated on Fee and couldn't hit her, so we were just able to just knock him silly while he concentrated on trying to hit a target he couldn't hit.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely some cool mechanics though with his fight. So that even if you quote unquote broke the game, you couldn't really just one shot that guy, because he got some kind of like invincible barrier.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, to where you had to let certain things play out before you could finally beat him and move on.
Mm-hmm. It was very interesting, for sure. Yeah, such a fun character, and you never really know what his motivations are, but that's what makes a good bad guy, and we'll learn a lot more about him. I want to know a lot more about Campanella as well. So it's funny, because we learn so much about our heroes, but then like the bad guys are just as intriguing in this series, and what their motivations are, what Ouroboros is really up to. We've been fighting these guys for so many games now, and they're still sticking around. We can't ever, defeat them outside of a handful.
Yeah, definitely.
That's good stuff. So we get finally to Chancellor Osborne, who got buff. I mean, what happened with that guy? He was hitting the gym in between a couple episodes.
It sure seems like it. Yeah, you put on a fancy coat, and all of a sudden you're ripped and ready to go toe to toe with a bunch of teenagers. So I definitely need to get his personal trainer's phone number.
No kidding. Like they didn't quite say. It wasn't even like, oh, the Great Twilight. I'm all ripped now. I was half expecting halfway through to rip his shirt off and fight with kind of like the final boss or one of the final bosses there in Persona, where he goes shirtless and gets all buff. But that didn't happen, thankfully.
Right. Yeah, his fight. I didn't think his fight was too challenging either. I did think it was cool that you got to use several different waves of your own team.
Yes.
So everybody kind of got into the action. None of the fights were particularly difficult. So if you only focused on certain characters and building certain characters throughout the story, it's not like you got stuck at the end of the game because you had to use, like, I think it was, 12 different characters or something like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe even 18 between the 3 different waves for that fight. So it was a nice touch.
Yeah, I made sure I had my main team as the last one to face him and just get through it until that point. And once I knew I could get Fee out there and Reen and the girls, I knew it was gonna be game over for Osborne.
Yeah, the final team definitely had to carry most of the fight.
Yeah,
I did the same. Put the best party in the team.
Although I'll give him credit, he hit Fee a couple times, which should have been technically impossible, but he got her. I think he even killed her at one point. I had to revive. It was like, whoa, wait a second, don't be hitting her. That's not fair.
No.
But yeah, it wasn't too bad, and then you get into the final Divine Knight battle, and again, I didn't feel like it was the most difficult fight. It was a good fight, but it wasn't that difficult.
Yeah, and then you got, after the fight with McBurn, you got that item that you could use, the Primordial Flame, where you could basically, just like a panic button, if you used it, you were basically brought back to full health. And could start all over. I didn't need to use it. No. I wanted to see what it looked like.
Okay.
So I did use it towards the end. Even at that point, I was to the point where I knew I would be able to beat this guy because I did want to see if I could get through without using it. But shortly before I dealt the final blow, I used it to see what it would look like. So. It was nothing special, but it was just kind of like a panic button you could use if you needed it.
Yeah, that was nice that they threw that in there. Honestly, we played on normal, so that might be more necessary on nightmare mode or something.
Probably.
Not necessarily. I don't. Did you go for platinum? Or are you going to go for platinum and play it on nightmare? By the way, I forgot to ask.
Like I told you before, I've replayed 1, 2, and 3. Before 4 came out, and I did those all on hard mode.
Okay.
I'll probably replay Cold Steel 4 on hard mode before Hajimari.
Okay.
So I can, go back through the story and get a refresher on all that. I'll do Nightmare way sometime in the future. I'll go back through all 4 Cold Steel games. In a few years from now, probably, to pick up the platinums. Because other than a trophy here and there, the Nightmare trophies are the only ones that I'm missing.
Okay.
But I just put probably 500 hours in between all of these games, doing the second playthroughs.
Yeah, that's a lot of time.
Cold Steels 1, 2, and 3 went by a little faster.
Yeah.
Than 4, but I'm not going to go through and do them all again right now. No, it'll be a while. But I'll definitely do Cold Steel 4 again.
We were talking about retirement before we got on the air, so maybe that's a good time to go for a Nightmare after you're retired.
Yeah, well, hopefully the console still works. I mean, I got like 30 years to go before retirement, so I don't know if the
Yeah,
PS4 will be working by then. But
I don't know. They don't seem like they're built to last that long. Uh, or the discs that we play on, that might be a bigger worry at some point. But so yeah, that was I thought it was a perfect ending fight. It got some, you finally get to fight this guy other than the first, in the first chapter. But then it gets interesting. And so, did you know about the normal ending and best ending when you did it the first time?
I did.
Okay.
I knew that there was a quote unquote normal ending. I think
Mm,
that should have been the bad ending because I thought that ending was terrible.
it was.
For 9 games worth of build up to get what they considered the normal ending was a huge letdown.
Yeah.
But I knew going into it that there was a normal ending and a true ending, so I knew when I first saw it that wasn't the end.
Okay.
But looking at it from the perspective of someone who didn't know, if that was all they got, if I were them, I would have been pretty upset because I thought that normal ending was pretty bad.
It was bad. Like, I understood it, because if that was all you had to know by, then I think that's probably the right choice that Ring makes. If he thinks that's the only way to end the Great Twilight, then he would happily sacrifice himself to do that, right?
I agree with you. I just think that I mean, from a narrative perspective, it was fine, but I just think from a payoff perspective,
Oh
it
yeah,
was like it was terrible because he makes his choice and he sacrifices himself, and then that's it.
yeah,
Game over. Right? Like I didn't think that was the ending worthy of a 9-game arc.
absolutely not.
It makes sense from Ring's perspective. Like, that part I get, but I'm glad that it was not too difficult to unlock the true ending.
No, I feel like they did a. If they're going to go that route, they did a very good job of making it at least accessible. It wasn't, like me with Royal, that I messed up and now I'd have to play the whole game again. No, you just need to go back to that before the final fight. There's a way to go do it. So, if you guys are listening to this and don't know what we're talking about, there is a true ending that you need to get. I don't think it is worth doing those final fights over again and the additional fight. Absolutely worth it.
Yeah. So the way you unlock it is you have to beat all 5 cryptids,
Mm-hmm.
and then once you beat the last cryptid, Koval will call you and unlock a hidden side quest. And once you complete that side quest, you'll get a special item. And I don't even know if that item appears in your inventory, but it'll basically add an extra scene after the Osborne fight, and the story picks up from there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, look in your arts menu and see if you have all 5 lost arts. If you don't, go get them all. Beat all 5 cryptids. Did you? So when you because I beat them all beforehand. So what happened
Yeah.
to you? And you had to leave the final dungeon. Did you have to go back and defeat the cryptids you were missing, or did they
So
just
I
give you the quest right away?
so they give it to you right away, and you immediately go to that last hidden temple, where the dragon is. What was funny is I had went to that place back because I was trying to complete the fishing subquest, but
Yeah.
that dungeon doesn't show up until a later scene. And it's funny because in the cutscene where the dungeon is, you can see an open treasure chest. So I had been to that same spot where that place was, but it obviously wasn't there, and I would have went in there and done that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So the way it plays out in the main story, if you because you can't complete that until the final day because the final cryptid doesn't even show up until
yeah.
after knight in Crossbell.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up, I think.
So the final cryptid shows up on top of Stargazer's tower.
Yeah,
Uh,
which I got.
yeah, so you can get the other 4 before then, but the last one you have to, it's on finale night.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, once you beat the 5th one, Toval will call you, and then you just follow the prompts from there, like most of the other side quests.
Yeah.
Then yeah, you get to fight the Holy Beast of Earth, which I thought was a pretty nice touch.
It was. It was cool.
Nice touch. Yeah.
And that was a decently challenging. It wasn't that easy, but
That guy was tanky. He had a lot of health.
Yeah, he did. I think it was like 800,000 or it was something a ton of HP.
Yeah, he took a while to. I mean, I was never in danger of getting killed by him. It just took a while to whittle down his health.
Yeah, that was exactly it. It was never in danger per se, but always, just going. We're going to be here a while. So yeah,
when you fought him, then what happened after? Did you have to redo the fight with Osborn?
Yes, yeah. So it basically takes you. It's kind of like a ripple in time. So I thought it was Vita who opened it up, but I'm not for sure. You go through this little portal outside the final dungeon, and then as soon as it's done, you get whisked back to the final area, and then you go back and you fight Osborn and the Divine Knight and fight all again. So, but absolutely worth it. Like, yeah. I was hesitant at first, but I did it.
Yeah, because I didn't get to see any of that. I didn't know who took you away to that. I didn't know if you had to fight Osborn or not.
Yeah.
When I reloaded the game after the quote unquote normal ending or the bad ending, it just took you right on as if you had, where it would have picked up if you had beaten them.
Right. Yeah, that's basically what it says. Like there's a ripple in time or something to that effect, and do you want to be taken back to before the Osborn fight, and you had to say yeah, and then you head outside, and there it is.
I read in one of the interviews they had with Kondo, the producer, originally that true ending was going to be locked behind every side quest. So you would have had to have done every side quest throughout the game in order for that the hidden side quest to unlock.
Wow.
And he decided against that. Now, I don't know if there would have been that ripple in time that would have allowed you to go back and knock that one out quickly or not. They
maybe
kept that in there. Who knows? Because in the main game, that quest was only locked behind the cryptids.
Yes.
I don't know if they would have kept that little ripple in time or not. Initially, locked that. They were originally going to have it locked behind every quest.
Wow. Maybe they had a nice compromise on that. Like, okay, let's do it this way. This seems more fair.
I think they made the right call there.
I do too, because as far as I know, this is the only time there's been alternate endings in a Trails game, right?
Yeah, I think you might be right. Obviously, I don't know about the Crossbell games. I know there was some kind of weird timeline manipulation thing with Zero no Cassette.
Okay.
But
with AO or whatever her name is.
I thought it was the first one. I think it's the first one. I'm not sure. I mean, like I said, I never played them, but I don't know if it was a true quote unquote alternate ending. I think it was just, okay, here we are fighting the final bad guy. Things don't go our way. It's part of the story where you have to redo everything.
I see.
You might be right. This might be. I hesitate to use the word alternate ending because the game makes it pretty clear that that's not the way things are supposed to play out.
No, you're right.
And it gives you easy access to go back and set things up so that you can get the true ending.
Well, the true ending is the true ending because we all know who's in Hajimari.
Yeah, right. I mean, if you see any kind of picture or for Hajimari, Rin is still there. So
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't make it too difficult to go back and on.
Me too. I would have been floored. So that was my final live stream, was actually going back, defeating the Holy Beast, doing the refights, and then the final fight. And it was 4.5 hours from start to finish, and worth every bit of time. So that's really not that bad in order to get this ending. And so before you get the ending, you get another amazing boss fight. One of the best boss fights I think I've ever had in gaming, just because of the different levels and the different teams. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool too. Everybody from the Salt Pails comes back. You can, I think you can set them up however you want, can't you?
Yes, yeah. You can make pretty much 3 Uber teams.
And then so you got one team focuses on arts, one focuses on physical attacks, and you got to knock out parts of the boss that prevent the main part, because normally the main part is immune to damage.
Mm-hmm.
Knock out. Basically, you got to take out his physical shield and his magical shield with your other 2 teams.
Yeah. That would have been nice to know beforehand, so you could have made your teams a little bit differently. I kind of made them all balanced, figuring that's what you should do, and end up using
only
2.
Only to find out certain characters just don't work.
Yeah. Luckily, Aurora, Principal Gwen, and Laura's dad were in the physical one, and they just, it was no contest for them to knock that guy out multiple times.
I did not have a problem at all knocking out the 2 side bosses. It wasn't too difficult. Even the final one wasn't all that tough once you knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
Once you got the shields down, and he could revive the shields if you took too long.
That was annoying. I think he revived him like twice on me. Yeah.
Yeah, so, but I thought it was really well done. It was a great way to kind of use everybody who you wanted, and have, everybody could get in and take part in the final fight and be part of the big victory. So I thought it was really cool.
I feel like it was necessary. Like I said, it's a true ending. So that's what it should have been. That's the ending that you need to experience, because that's what brings closure to it. In terms of the fight, but then you finally get to see the ending with man, what an ending. I can't even begin to say how perfect the wedding was, and bringing all these people together, including people that were not in the game. Like, so you saw Zen in there, a bunch of other people had popped up.
And they were really just concept art photos. Like, you didn't get to see their actual characters.
Right.
It was pretty. Kevin was in there.
Kevin, that was it. Yeah, I was trying to think of the other one.
Yeah. So that was really cool. Zen was in there. I think we saw Zeet, didn't we? The wolf.
I believe so. I'm not. Yeah, I believe you're right. Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. It was a lot of fun. Even before that, the scenes leading up to it, where you saw the Divine Knights disappear.
Yeah.
You saw
the revived Crow. Yeah.
And then you saw Milliam got to come back. I thought that was really nice. I particularly thought it was nice that they waited until the very end of the game to bring her back.
Yes.
Milliam and Altina pretty much fight the exact same way.
They didn't need them both.
Exactly. So I thought that it was a pretty cool, from a narrative standpoint, pretty cool the way that they decided to wait until the end of the game to bring her back. And then that's the part where you got to see Cedric decide to go with Shirley. You got to see Claire and Lecter and Rufus kind of group back up, and they were kind of looking on from a distance. So it was all really well done. And then of course the Divine Knights leaving was emotional for sure.
It was. I didn't think about that one. But yeah, to see these giant hulking things of metal to have emotions and to feel bad, but it had to happen, right?
I mean, more like a party member the entire, I mean, not through Cold Steel 1 because you don't get him till the very end, but Cold Steel's 2, 3, and 4, he felt like he was part of the party.
Yeah.
You know?
It was a really good part of the party.
Felt like a major casualty.
Yeah, when he couldn't speak, that was rough too.
Yeah. But, even losing him at the end, he's like the main party member we lost at the end of the game.
He was.
So.
Now, did you foresee Milliam getting her new body? Like, did you put that together when you saw that, not casket, but that thing there at the Black Workshop? Did you kind of think that's maybe what was going to happen?
No.
No, okay.
No, I didn't see that coming. I wasn't surprised that she came back at the end of the game. I just didn't. I never really thought about where's her body going to come from. I never really, never really followed that train of thought. I just figured it would happen somehow.
I remember seeing that there and going investigating it, and for some reason that stuck with me that was hopefully what was going to happen at the end.
Okay, yeah. I mean, looking back on it now, it does make sense because I do remember investigating that. Her casing was there, and when you walk by it, even if you don't investigate it, the characters speak up.
Yeah.
You're walking past. I mean, that's what prompted me to go and take a look at it. But if you just drive past it, they will speak up. I think Altina in particular mentioned something.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
Yeah, so it was a nice touch.
It really was. So what do you think about Cedric joining Ouroboros? I think he's going to I don't think he's going to like it very much. I think he's going to get kicked around more than he thinks he is. Like, they're not going to care that he was a prince.
Yeah, so that part was spoiled for me before Cold Steel 4.
Oh, man, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I saw that on the wiki where I was looking around and I was looking at the page with Ouroboros. And, because this game had been out for a year in Japan, he was one of the entries at the very last one. So I wasn't surprised to see him join. I knew that was coming. Good riddance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We don't need you in here. Leave the Empire to Alphen and Oliver. Yeah. Adios, pal.
That part of it makes complete sense because I don't see any path for him back into the royal family. There's just no way. So he kind of had to choose that way.
I don't either. The only part of it that disappoints me is this means we're probably going to have to suffer them in the next arc.
Oh yeah,
because he'll be. I'm sure they'll focus on his entry into Ouroboros as the series moves on.
Yeah, well, they need some new members. They've lost quite a few.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, it felt like he instead of deciding to face the consequences of his actions, he uses his quote unquote freedom he uses it as an excuse to see the world.
Right.
I mean, be a man. Own up to what you did,
That's not him. That's that doesn't seem like anything he would ever do.
No, it's not. It's definitely not him. That's why I said before he's got a lot of growing up to do. He
does, and yeah, the country's in good hands depending on what way forward. There was a bunch of stuff that was kind of rattled off there that Reen read off as to what was going on in Erebonia, and it certainly seems like the nobles are going to come back into some sort of power. That the royal family will be kind of like, we don't know, and there was a bunch of stuff just kind of thrown out there that I couldn't quite keep up with, and it's uncertain.
I definitely watched that part a couple of times. Obviously I watched it when I beat the game for the first time. I watched it on your live stream. Just so that I could remember everything, because Reen rattled off a lot of stuff. It was quick. Yeah. Just so that I could, make sure I have a grasp on what's going on after the war. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of civil unrest in the Empire. They basically have to admit that they were wrong about Calvert being behind the assassination,
Mm-hmm.
which of course we knew about, but the rest of the world didn't know.
Right.
And then they kind of give you a little bit of an insight into the Calvert arc, where they talk about, Rocksmith. He's the president in Calvert now. He's
Mm-hmm.
on his way out.
Yeah.
They've already have a new president elected at the end of Cold Steel 4.
Yeah.
So, you get a little bit of an insight. So basically, when they start the Calvert arc, you can have whoever they want in there and write that character, to be any kind of a character they want. And then they touch up a little bit on Crossbell with Rufus being he's in jail.
Yeah.
He seems to be the only one paying for what he did.
Yeah.
He goes to jail, and then but his personal troops they don't want to let go of Crossbell. So Lloyd, his party, the SSS, kind of leads an operation to free Crossbell again.
Mm-hmm.
And, it sounds like Crossbell's its own state again after Cold Steel 4 comes to a close, which is nice.
It is. That was one of the few parts that was ruined for me, with having to look into Hajimari, for the podcast and just glancing at something. I definitely saw something about Crossbell's re-independence. So I knew that was coming. That's not a shock by any stretch.
Yeah.
But it was definitely one of those things like, oh, okay, that's how it happened.
Yeah, and with Crossbell going free, obviously, then some of the other countries who were annexed into the Empire, they look at that and they see, okay, well, maybe I want to be free now.
Yeah,
Jirai and Northumbria, they start to talk about their independence. So who knows? There might be some kind of civil wars going on in the future there.
I would imagine that they'll all break away if possible. Why would you stay a part of it if you didn't want to be in the first place?
Yeah. And then they talk about, Lecter and Claire. Basically, they get to go back to their former jobs, running the RMP and the intelligence division.
Yeah. Did they even get a slap on the wrist? I mean,
it doesn't sound like it. I mean, is no one else capable of running these two divisions?
No.
Basically, they just got away scot-free. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah.
Then the best part about it was the Bracer Guild gets restored throughout the Empire. So,
yes. So Fee and Sarah are employed for a while.
Yeah. And, Agate and Zinn, they can run around and do all the stuff they got to do, and yeah.
That's good news for certain. So I want to. There's one big thing to talk about at the end, but the thing I want to talk about is, do we have a shared disdain, and this is completely random, for Palm and Vantage Masters?
I didn't mind Vantage Masters.
Okay.
When I first started Cold Steel 3 for the first time, it took me a while to get the hang of it.
Mm-hmm.
But once I did, I didn't have too much of a problem with it. There were a few tweaks in Cold Steel 4, particularly with some of the higher level opponents that made it more challenging. But Vantage Masters was fine.
All right.
Palm is evil.
It's so bad.
I know it was in the Crossbell games. I wish they would have left it there. It's evil. I hate it. I was getting so frustrated. It's because it's completely random.
It's
you
awful.
can be good at it. You can be good at it, but sometimes that just doesn't matter.
Wow.
The computer is just gonna, the opponents just seem to be able to come out of nowhere and just say, "Okay, game's over. You lost."
That's no fun.
That was awful.
No, I didn't. I played it the one time you had to. I was like, yeah, I'm done. That's all I need to know. No thanks.
I was trying to hunt some trophies, and there's 2 trophies locked behind Palm.
Oh, I'll never platinum it then.
Yeah, one of the trophies was just to beat Palm, and another one was to get all the master quartz, which you don't get the last one unless you beat everybody in Palm.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, it was awful.
That's
once I was
bad.
done. Once I was done with it, I'm like, oh, thank God, I will never ever have to do this again.
Which I don't
It was
mind little
fun.
puzzle games like that. Tetris Attack and all those type of things. Those are fun. But that game was just bad, and I don't like
Evil.
being forced to do
Evil.
anything, let alone mini
Yeah,
games.
straight up evil. Palm is evil.
Yeah, I don't know two people that are like, yeah, I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, some people probably, I'm sure people don't hate it as much as we did. I don't see how you could like it. I mean, at least Vantage Masters, you could enjoy it if you wanted to.
Yeah, of
If
course.
you understood it, uh, you know, you could enjoy the challenge of it
Hmm.
if it was your type of thing.
Right.
Not so.
Not so
Yeah,
much.
I'm all for Tetris and all the games like that. But this wasn't like that. You had your own side of the board where you were doing that, and that could be fun. Since you were competing against one of the other, characters, could just end the game, which it felt to me like they could end it whenever they wanted to.
Mm,
It was brutal.
that's no fun. I don't enjoy stuff like that. So I
It's,
guess
it's the
the
closest in 15 years come to break.
that's not good. You don't ever want to do that.
I've done that before. I did that in the back of the PlayStation 2 era.
Okay,
I did break a controller.
I've
This
never
is the
ever done
closest
that.
I've come. Yep.
I would cry if I broke my controller, especially over something a silly little mini game. But I understand your frustration. It's
I was able
terrible.
to fix back. I think it was Xenosaga 2. I was playing one of the little mini quests in there. I was so mad over. I mean, I was much younger back then. I was a kid.
Hmm.
But I was so mad that I lost and had to do probably half an hour's worth of work all over again.
Oh man.
I ended up spending an hour and a half fixing the controller, which I could fix.
Wow.
But yeah, I ended up losing a lot more time because I busted the controller open. Uh,
That's funny.
yeah. The only thing that kept me in check this time with Pod was I knew the PS4 controllers are much more expensive.
Oh gosh, yeah. That's my always thing. Like before I did, I'd be like, "Oh gosh, this is expensive," and my wife would kill me if I broke a controller, and I'm not getting another one, so let's not break it.
Yep.
So there's one final scene, and so I want people to say this because I think you could easily beat the game and not know about this. So if you don't know about the extra scene that I'm talking about, hit pause on the podcast, and well, let me tell you what to do. Go reload your game again with the final save clear file, and there's one extra scene in there. So yeah, go do that. And so why do they do that? Who's going
You
to?
know what? Honestly, I have no idea. I like the extra scene. It was a great scene to watch. I
Yeah.
didn't know about it. I didn't know about
No.
it. It was until I was just looking around at stuff on YouTube where I found it. I
Okay.
just happened to. I actually watched the secret scene first on YouTube.
Oh wow.
And then I went back. I went back and reloaded the save after I saw how they unlocked it on YouTube.
Mm,
And watched it on my game. Yeah, it was so hidden. The game gave you no inclination that it was there.
no.
And I was watching your live stream. I saw that people told you that there was another scene and to reload your save. 'Cause, yeah,
Well, yeah,
nowhere in the
because
game did they tell you about it.
during the live stream, I'm like, "Oh man, that was such a great ending." Blah blah blah. All right, good night, everybody. Thanks for sharing. And they're like, "Wait." I'm like, what? What else could there possibly be?
Yeah, well, the scene itself was good. I thought the method to unlock it was a little bit hidden. It was a little bit.
Yeah.
It was too hard to find.
Why not just throw that at the end, like post credit?
Yeah.
That seems like the best place for something like that. That's where everybody else would do it. The Avengers in credit scene. That type of deal. That's what games have done plenty of times before.
Yeah.
But
So the scene itself,
We got
Yeah.
to
So
see the Grandmaster.
you get to see the Grandmaster. It appears to be female.
Uh-huh.
I did, again, an interview with Kondo. They said that they changed the voice actor in every game the Grandmaster appears in
Oh,
so that you don't get a hint as to who it will be.
interesting.
Because I think the Grandmaster does show up in some of the games that we haven't played.
Okay, okay.
I'm pretty sure in Sky the Third, there is another scene in that room that they're in, where they have the pillars for each of the
Yeah.
there's a scene in that room in Sky the Third. I don't know if there's a scene in Crossbell with the Grandmaster, but Kondo did say that they use a different voice actor every time the Grandmaster shows up, so that you don't get any kind of hints to who it is.
That's fascinating.
So while the Grandmaster certainly appears to be female in that scene, who knows?
Who knows? Now, is that the same person that's on the front of Hajimari?
Sure looked like it to me.
That's what I thought.
When I first watched the scene, I was like, wait a minute. I remember seeing pictures of the box art for Hajimari. That one really, it looks the same to me.
That's my initial impression. So,
I mean, they sure, in that scene, they sure give a lot of hints as to what's going to happen in the future. I mean, they tell you that there's only 3 years left, basically before the world ends.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so we're in 1206, I believe it is, when Cold Steel 4 is.
That's right.
So you're looking at 1209.
Yeah.
Wrapping up the series, which is nice. I mean, it's nice to know that the story that they're telling will all take place within the next 3 years, which means all the characters that we know are still going to be relevant. It's not like, it's 30 years from now where Estelle and Joshua are too old to go fight it.
They're married, got kids, and now all of a sudden they got to go back out to war. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah. So that was pretty cool. Then the Grandmaster tells you that the final stage is going to begin. She calls it the Eternal Recurrence Plan. It's the final stage of their Orpheus final plan. So
all these plans, so many plans. I thought it was interesting the idea that they said like the Great Twilight basically didn't matter. Like, oh well, it didn't happen.
Yeah, it was like, well, we plan to activate the Great Twilight, and then whatever happened as a result really doesn't matter.
That seems like a lot of effort for something that didn't matter.
Yeah. It seemed that way with everything that happened in the Sky Arc as well.
It sure did.
They caused the Oriel to appear. And that's really all they wanted. Everything that happened after that
doesn't matter. It's fine. So yeah, I thought that was an amazing scene to finally get to see that. And
I think it's safe to say that Ouroboros is definitely up to something.
What makes you say that? I don't know. It certainly sets the stage for Hajimari, no matter how long we have to wait for it. And that does seem like that will finally end kind of that arc of it with, Trails to Black moving to Calvard. And that, I believe that's also in 1206, if I'm not mistaken. So it's going to pick up right after the war. That's cool.
Yeah, and speaking of Hajimari, one of the things I wanted to make sure we talked about, did you read the 3 and 9 novels that you collected throughout the game?
So I did not, and I think it's because I didn't collect them all. That's something I need to go back I could probably just look it up and get that all, because those are characters that are going to appear in that game.
So I believe that the 2 characters were the main characters throughout the novel. They are 2 of the main characters in Hajimari.
Yeah, they're part of that third new arc that we don't. You've got the Crossbell people and you've got the Erebonian people, and then it's they along with that new Rosenberg doll. That's kind of that whole arc with that masked person. Yeah,
so I would definitely recommend to everybody and the novels are interesting. I mean, they're long. It's a long novel. it's not a difficult read. It's an engaging story. It provides a ton of backstory for two characters play a major part in the next game. So it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely recommended to read those. Probably more so than any of the other novels that we've collected in Cold Steel. It's definitely those are probably more recommended to read than any of the other ones in the past.
That's yeah, because I've never been big on that. I know yourself and like Jordan and a bunch of other people, they love reading those stories. It just didn't really interest me, even though I knew it would be beneficial. There's definitely another person. I was going to say in that final wedding scene, it's a blonde-haired male character, and then there's another girl that are also in Hajimari. I think they may have shown up in the Crossbell series, but they showed up for the wedding. They're going to be big characters in Hajimari as well.
Yeah, I don't recall who those were. I don't remember the characters you're talking about.
Yeah, there was a lot of people going on there, so it was tough to see it all.
Yeah, you definitely get a lot of backstory. The backstories are pretty tragic for the two. I mean, they're just kids.
Hmm.
So they have a pretty rough life. Obviously, I don't know how much of it will be explained in Hajimari, or if they will have assumed you've read the novels. Yeah, so they'll be pretty pretty good characters, I think, in the next game.
I think we're in for something pretty cool. I think it's going to be very different in terms of gameplay from what we're used to, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. I
Yeah, I think you're right. But so far Falcom has not let us down. I don't see there's any reason to think that Hajimari won't be as good. From a narrative.
Yeah, I think narrative wise, it's going to be just what we want. I don't think we could possibly live up to this game in terms of what it did and tying all the ones together and getting us a conclusion. But it's going to be interesting to see what they even attempt to try to do in Hajimari, because I'm still not sure what the idea is, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's, like you said before, there's the Crossbell party, there's the Erebonian party. They're kind of broken up into episodes. Don't really know how that plays out. I'm trying to avoid as many spoilers as I can. I know there's a guy with a mask on.
Yeah,
I don't want to know. I don't want to know who that is. So I'm trying to avoid as much as I can. But I know that it's going to play a little differently.
mm-hmm.
But from what I understand, you do get